Hello, it is late July 2023 and I'm in Wyoming's Wind River Range for what's planned to be a 6-day backpacking adventure. As I set off into the Fitzpatrick wilderness, the three biggest challenges that I expect to face are off-trail travel, which brings its own set of risk and rewards, especially on a solo trip. Snow, I am expecting to be above the snow line on this trip. We'll see how that goes. And mosquitoes. There's a lot of wetness out here due to the high snow year, and mosquitoes are hungry. That being said, it's a beautiful day and I'm ready to hit the trail. There were a few sprinkles on the drive out here, but besides the wind, it has turned into a calm day. Sun shining down, a little hot on this initial climb. A handy little bridge over this steep ravine. The trailhead was packed full, but even just a few miles into the wilderness, it feels like it's only me. I should be closing in on the area in which I hope to find camp for my first night in the Fitzpatrick wilderness. Home sweet home. I've located camp just above the Glacier Bomber intersection. A pleasant, well-protected site here. Time to get set up. A sub-range of the Rocky Mountains, the Wind River Range stretches 100 miles across northwestern Wyoming and holds 19 of the state's 20 highest peaks. On this trip, I'm using the Wind River Range North map by Beartooth Publishing, supplemented with the free U.S. Forest Service Visitor Map app. The route is heavily inspired by Nancy Pallister's book, Beyond Trails in the Wind River Mountains. Let's take a look at the map for day one. Starting at the Torrey Creek Trailhead, I took the Glacier Trail to the intersection with Bomber Basin Trail, where I set up camp. Day one was a little less than 4 miles. Day one in the winds has got my trip off to a smooth start. Nice, reasonable hike in today, beautiful sheltered campsite, but as I settle in for the evening, some storm clouds have moved in and there's a little bit of thunder rumbling. I'm hoping for a restful evening, but we'll see how that goes. That'll be the end of day one. Good night. Good morning. Made to day 2 of my adventure in the winds. Had a restful night last night. Temperature stayed very mild, barely dropping below 50. There are a few small wind, rain showers that blew through, but they didn't have much of an impact. My plan today is not a huge mileage day, but I will have to climb about 3,000 feet along the way as I continue upwards into the alpine reaches of the range. I'm going to get breakfast finished up, pack up camp, and then it'll be time to hit the trail. My day has started with a relatively gentle climb through the forest, switchbacking up to a nice view of Bomber Basin. That must be Bomber Falls on the side of the mountain. If all goes according to plan, I'll get a closer view of them later in the trip. Got a little ground bird. I'll take that back. He's an airbird. Just like that, I've popped above tree line, out into the alpine of the Wind River Range, but I do still have quite a bit of climbing left to do today, and certainly more later on in the trip as well. I'm at my high point for the day, just a bit under 11,000 feet. I've risen approximately 4,000 feet already since the start of the trip, and that's looking out north, the way I've been hiking up from. Take a 360-degree look. The saddle's so wide up here that it honestly barely kind of gives a visibility out to the sides. But this is south, the way that I'll be heading. Nice day today. Some puffy clouds to protect me from the sun. Peering down as I drop down into Burro Flat. Out to the west is the Goat Flat escarpment. And Goat Flat is pretty much the central idea of this trip. It will be both the crux and, I suspect, the highlight. I'm going to spend the next 2 days looping around the plateau to get in position to try to get up and over the top of it. Phillips Lake, the first of many scenic lakes that I'll get to experience out here in the Fitzpatrick wilderness. My original plan today was going to be to stick to the trail for the entirety, but I'm making good time and I'm feeling hot to trot, as Nancy Pallister would say, and so I'm cutting off trail to try to make my way to Upper Phillips Lake and perhaps even Golden Lake to look for a secluded campsite, and if I don't find one, I'll return to the trail and probably set up a double lake. We'll see how this off-trail portion goes. Upper Phillips Lake as I continue to make my way towards Golden Lake. Clouds are building, getting a little grayer. It started to rain and I'm caught in between lakes. I don't want to try to ascend in this boulder field as a storm is starting, so I'm just going to retreat back to Upper Phillips Lake and set up at one of the sites down there. Home sweet home. Found camp on the shores of Upper Phillips Lake. Gonna go ahead and get set up before this storm starts in earnest. It's been thundering.
The Fitzpatrick Wilderness lies host to the largest glacier in the U.S. Rocky Mountains, Gannett Glacier. Meltwater from Gannett supplies Dinwiddie Creek and eventually flows into the Wind River.
The storm has passed. It's worth noting that this area, the Dinwiddie Lakes, has pretty much the second most grizzly sightings in the winds, after of course the Green River Lakes. This northern stretch of the Wind River Range is definitely grizzly country. Let's take a look at the map for day 2. Starting at my campsite in Bomber Basin, I climbed up the glacier trail, up to the high point, and then began to drop down through Burro Flat and into the Dinwiddie Lakes. I then broke off the main trail to set up on Upper Phillips Lake. Day 2 was about 8 miles. Day 2 of my adventure in the Shoshone National Forest has been a great day. The weather was very cooperative, the clouds keeping the sun off me and the heat down throughout the climb of the day, and then the storm waiting to break until I got camp set up. I didn't quite make it up to Golden Lake, but I've got a beautiful site on Upper Phillips Lake, and I'm settling in for a relaxing evening. That'll be the end of day 2. Good night. Good morning. Made to day 3 in the Wind River Range. A calm morning today. Last night was anything but. A big storm rolled through, lightning, thunder, rain, wind. The thing that saved me was having this nice protected campsite, and the worst of the wind did not come down and hit me, very fortunately. It's cleared up heading into the day, and today is when I'll start to do more breaking off the trail. I've got a lot of trail to follow, but by the end of the day, I'll start to break off into a set of lakes that should give me a stepping stone to get up to the top of Goat Flat. I'm gonna finish up breakfast, get camp packed up, and be time to hit the trail. Back on trail. This is actually the only trail that I've been on this entire trip, the Glacier Trail. My trustworthy trail looks a bit more like a stream through here. Double Lake, the outlet from Double, is the culprit for why the Glacier Trail turned into a stream right below it. Star Lake. It's looking like a mostly sunny day today. Maybe no more storms. That is quite the view. Looking down on Honeymoon Lake. Dinwoody Creek is absolutely raging. Popping out into the Downs Fork Meadows. The color of the water looks like just straight glacial runoff. As I pass by the location of the old Downs Fork Bridge, I am finishing up with my stretch of the Glacier Trail, which is the only trail I've known for the past 3 days. I'll now be hopping on Downs Fork, and the only way I'll see Glacier again on this trip is if I can't make it past my Cruxes tomorrow and I have to walk out the same way I came in. I guess these were the supplies for the new bridge. I wonder how they got all this in here. The new bridge over Downs Fork. I'm not gonna take it. I just want to come check it out. I'm gonna stick to the north side of the river. Well, I believe that I've come to the end of my trail along Downs Fork. So now I'll be breaking off trail, trying to find my way to Blueberry Lake, where I hope to locate camp. This is about the third pile of bear scat I've seen in the very few minutes since leaving the main trail. I've come across the outlet from Blueberry Lake, which is a good landmark. I seem to have found Grasshopper Creek, which should be another good landmark. From here, I'll pretty much hopefully just be heading northwest up to Blueberry. Fortune has smiled on me today, and I've been able to locate and follow the Use Trail that heads up to Blueberry Lake after I left Grasshopper Creek. And it may not look like much, but this is much better than me just bombing through the brush. Even if I'm not able to make it up and over Goat Flat, this end of Downs Fork is quite the scenic destination in its own right. That Use Trail was very tricky to follow, but I was determined not to lose it, and it rewarded me with delivery right to Blueberry Lake. I'm currently standing in the outlet. Home sweet home. I did have to get my feet wet to cross the outlet, but no big deal since I'm right here at camp. I've explored this side of the outlet pretty thoroughly. Found 2 old fire rings, a bunch of old horse scat, but really no established tent pads. So I'm just gonna try to pick a flat piece of ground and make the best of it. Let's take a look at the map for day 3. Starting at my campsite on Upper Phillips Lake, cut back to the Glacier Trail, and then followed that to the Downs Fork Trail, to the end of Downs Fork Meadows, where I then cut back off trail and set up camp on Blueberry Lake. Day 3 was about 10.5 miles. Day 3 in the Fitzpatrick Wilderness has been another great day of hiking. Awesome views, especially looking down on Honeymoon Lake and coming along Downs Fork, and I've got a beautiful site set up on Blueberry Lake. Longtime fans of the channel may remember a different Blueberry Lake that I camped at in the winds several years ago. There are so many lakes out here that they have to reuse many of the names. I've got camp set up, dinner's in me, and I'm settling in for a relaxing evening. That'll be the end of day 3. Good night. Good morning. Made it to day 4. Had a restful night last night, which is good news. I needed that sleep to tackle my Crux day today. And there are actually 3 Cruxes along the way as I try to make my way up and over the towering 2,000-foot cliffs of Goat Flat. The first will be getting up to the top, the second will be getting across the plateau, and the third will be dropping down the other side into Bomber Gully. And these are going to be in order of least to most challenging, and I will have different bailout options along the way for each of them, but I'm hopeful to be able to make it all the way. I'm going to finish up breakfast, get camp packed up, and it'll be time to tackle these Cruxes. Adios, Blueberry. Thanks for the hospitality. Maybe I'll get to see you from the top of Goat Flat. The Use Trail delivered me about 1/3 of the way up the climb and out of the trees, which was a huge help. It's petered out in this little meadow. I'm going to continue climbing up behind me to rise up onto Goat Flat. I definitely am starting to see some snow up there, but I'm hopeful that it won't be a huge problem. A nice old campsite. I must be on the right track. Wow. An absolutely gorgeous hidden meadow on the way up to Goat Flat. I reckon what I'm going to do is drop down into it and then follow that grassy path in between the 2 cliffs. While doing his business, this bear must have been enjoying the view. I gotta get up there somehow. I wasn't sure if I would make it, but I did. Crux 1 of 3, done. I'm up on Goat Flat. It's cold and windy. I'm at about 12,200 feet, right below the high point of Goat Flat. This little rock outcrop has afforded me my first break in the wind in a few hours, and probably my last break in the wind for a few hours, eating lunch. Pros of Goat Flat: it's not covered in snow. Cons of Goat Flat: the wind blows hard constantly. There ain't no goats, and there's also not a step of flat ground out here. If I were to rename this place, I would call it the Windy Lumpy Plateau. Crux 2 of 3 completed. Made it across Goat Flat and found the start of Bomber Gully. I do see some snow down in there. This is going to be my most difficult crux. Hopefully the snow isn't much more than we see here. And I've also got some big storm clouds building behind me, which is no bueno. Made it across the snow, no problem. But I'm running out of time with this storm. I gotta get down, down, down. It's gonna be steep and slippery on the talus. I can see Bomber Lake. Just gotta make it down. That was tough. Storm caught me right at the top of the gully, and I had no choice but to hunker down and ride it out. Now I'm wet, cold, and I still have to traverse the toughest crux of the trip, with it now being extra wet. This has been a stressful 3 hours, 1 in the storm and 2 heading down, but I'm closing in. There's a dilapidated cabin near the southwest corner of the lake. I came this way just to see it. Now I'm gonna head to the southeast corner where I hope to find camp. Home sweet home. Crux 3 of 3 completed. Made it down Bomber Gully and found camp on Bomber Lake. Challenging day today, but I knocked out all my cruxes. Now it's time to get set up and enjoy the view.
Bomber Lake is named after a 1943 B-24 crash that claimed the lives of all 11 crew.
Let's take a look at the map for day 4. Since it's off-trail travel, I won't be trying to show the route, just some key points along the way. Starting at my campsite on Blueberry Lake, I made it up to Goat Flat, and then got about to the high point before continuing to the Bomber Lake Gully and heading down to Bomber Lake. Day 4 was about 8 miles. What a day 4 has been. I experienced an incredible range of emotions, from uncertainty, nervousness, downright fear, to jubilation, strength, thankfulness, all in a day's work off trail in the winds. My 2 favorite sites were the private secret valley on the way up to Goat Flat, and of course getting down to Bomber Lake and enjoying camp and its beautiful shores. I've got dinner in me, camp set up, and as long as the wind doesn't blow too much harder, I'm settling in for a relaxing evening. That'll be the end of day 4. Good night. Good morning. Made it to day 5 of my backpacking trip in the Fitzpatrick wilderness. Restful night last night, but this morning a few storm clouds have moved in, sprinkled a little bit of rain, so I've been just enjoying kind of a slow morning as I wait for them to pass by. Once I do get going, it'll be another off-trail day today. I'm going to try to follow Bomber Canyon down, out, to put myself in a position to get back to the Torrey Creek Trailhead tomorrow. While I won't have the cruxes of yesterday's off-trail adventure, I do foresee some challenges, namely the potential for burned deadfall, as well as for some mucky marshes. We'll tackle that when we get there. I'm going to finish up breakfast, let these storm clouds pass through, and then it'll be time to hit the off-trail. Day 5 has been a lost day. The storm did not abate from 7 a.m. until after 2 p.m. and by that point I made the decision to just stay in camp. I think I was a little spooked from yesterday when the storm caught me in a very compromising situation. Once bitten, twice shy. This does give me a little bit of a longer day out to finish the trip tomorrow than I would have liked, but it should be doable. I'm already settled in. I'm going to keep relaxing and hope for better weather tomorrow. That'll be the end of day 5. Good night. Good morning. Made it to day 6, my trip in the Shoshone National Forest. The storm continued into the night last night, so I was ecstatic to wake up this morning and see a crystal blue sky. I've got to head out back to the trailhead. It will start out off trail, and then maybe a little more than halfway I'll pick up the trail to finish off the adventure. I haven't seen anyone since the morning of day 3. I'm sure I'll start seeing people as I get close to the trailhead, and it'll probably be a zoo there. I've got some ground to cover, and it's time to hit the trail. Let's take a look at the map for day 6. Starting at my campsite on Bomber Lake, I'll head off trail through the Bomber Canyon to connect with the Bomber Basin Trail, back through Bomber Basin, and then retrace my steps at the beginning of the trip down Glacier Trail back to the Torrey Lake Trailhead. Day 6 is about 8.5 miles for a trip total of a little under 40 miles. A beautiful outlet for a beautiful lake. Thanks for the hospitality, Bomber. Heading on down Bomber Canyon. It must have been quite the conflagration out here in Bomber Canyon. The trees are burned all the way up to their tippy tops. Very fresh scat. That must have been laid down last night or early this morning. I've made it to the first of the ponds along East Torrey Creek. Still a ways to go off trail. Crossed over East Torrey Creek. It's been very slow going, but I'm making it one step at a time. This is the second fallen down cabin that I found on this trip. Off the edge flows Bomber Falls. I made it back to an official trail, Bomber Basin Trail. It took just under 4 hours to do that 4 miles of off-trail travel this morning. It wasn't dangerous or sketchy. It was just very, very slow going. Every step was across a boulder field or through a marsh or over deadfall or into tall grass that hid pitfalls. Every step really took thought and focus. But I'm through all that now. I've got a little over a mile on the Bomber Basin Trail, and then I'll be back to the Glacier Trail to finish off the last several miles the same way I started the trip. So hopefully I can make some good time and finish off this beautiful adventure. Good old Bomber Basin. I spent my first night of the trip right there in those trees to the right. I spy with my little eye a trailhead. Back to the bridge across East Torrey Creek. That water is flowing down from Bomber Lake. That was quite the 6-day adventure in the Fitzpatrick Wilderness. As mentioned, it took me about 4 hours to do the first 4 miles today, and then a little over an hour and a half to do the latter 5. And that's the difference between off-trail and on-trail travel. I can't say that I had fun every minute of this trip, but gotta take the good with the bad. That's backpacking. Honestly, that's life in general. I got 1 day to get cleaned up, resupply, and head over to the western side of the winds for my next trip. Until then, thanks for tuning into Lane's World. Goodbye.